Hi friends and welcome. As the instructional leader in a court and community school setting, how would you improve student academic outcomes in your program? This is an important question because many students come into the court and community school setting with many academic deficiencies, with chronic truancy, and really high levels of stress and trauma sometimes. Making progress towards positive academic outcomes is challenging. However, this can be done with the right planning and steps. It's possible to see progress with intentional planning and practice. So today we're going to talk about how a principal of a court and community school can make or see progress, academic progress for their students. Before we get into the discussion, I want to introduce myself. I'm Sabani Parcells. I am a coach and mentor for new and struggling principals in court and community schools. I help them to create learning environments that are safe, thriving, and trauma-informed. If this sounds like something that you are interested in, if you are a new or struggling principal in court and community schools, then you are in the right place. So let's go ahead and get started with our discussion. So the first step that a principal would need to take would be to begin with implementation of trauma-informed practices within the school program. What is important to do is to begin with staff awareness of what a trauma-informed school looks like, what trauma-informed practices are, and how the school can start moving in that direction. And it's a good idea to have formal training for the staff within the professional development time so that the staff as a whole can begin to understand the language around trauma-informed practices and to begin to utilize that language, and also to become aware with training how trauma impacts the learning brain, how students that live with trauma or have dealt with trauma are coming into the school setting, so that the approach to how students are being supported can be handled in a trauma-informed way. It's important as well for the principal to model the language in both verbal as well as written communication to staff as well as to the students. It is also important that all interest holders in the court and community school understand the move towards a trauma-informed school setting and the trauma-informed practices that will be put in place to support students and to support staff, because trauma-informed practices have a positive impact on both students and staff when implemented throughout the school. The next thing a principal will want to consider is an update of policies and procedures to have a trauma-informed approach or lens. It's important to review the policies and procedures that are currently in place at the school and begin to, with the staff, start making changes that reflect a trauma-informed school. Areas to consider for trauma-informed practice and trauma-informed care: student enrollment and orientation. How are students coming into the program? Does the school take a very intentional approach to bringing students in so that stress and trauma is eliminated and that students are aware of the school expectations and policies, and they understand what is expected of them moving forward? Also, are the staff members serving students in a way that is supportive and positive when they come in for the first time through an orientation process or through the enrollment process? The discipline approach is also another huge consideration for the school to review when there is a discipline referral or an issue with a student's behavior. How are staff members handling discipline situations? Are staff members taking an approach that is trauma informed? And if not, what are some practices that can be put in place so that students can be restored back to the school community, that they are not expelled or suspended out of school for low-level infractions, and that the harm that is created with the community is dealt with in a restorative way. Also, student and family support is another important consideration in terms of implementing trauma-informed practices. Are students receiving services at school? Are families included in supporting students and supporting the family that may have suffered from a traumatic experience? How is the school providing those services so that both students and the families have the support that they need to be able to function and move forward in a positive way, and are able to deal with the aftermath of trauma so that academics can have the appropriate amount of attention and time that is needed to see those positive changes or positive outcomes. And then finally, consideration should be taken for the student transition out of the program. Families and students should be supported in being connected back to their either home school or the community. And so looking at policies that the school has for transitioning students out, whether they're graduating or going back to their home school, what are the policies and procedures to support the students and the families so that there is a warm handoff and that students are getting back to the community and back to their traditional schools in the least disruptive way possible. So the second thing that a principal can do to see improvements in student achievement is to take a deep dive into the student data. The first step would be to identify what data is available. Like I discussed earlier, there are times when students come into the program and there's not a lot of information because of truancy issues or gaps in school attendance. Getting as much information as possible from a student's cumulative file to look at statewide or local summative tests can be a start for looking at satellite data, just to get an overview of how students are performing and if there are gaps and where those gaps are in their academic progress. So a question to ask is, what is the most recent student data that is available, and what assessments or other data is available in that student's cumulative file? So doing a review of what's available, what comes into the school, is an important first step, just to get all of the information that is open for the staff to begin to look at data and start to analyze what is going on with student learning. And again, that can be both state and local data, and there may be other information. For example, students who receive special education services may have testing that has been done in the previous few years or year that could be also reviewed and put together with the state data to have a more complete picture. But we have to keep in mind that the satellite data, the state data, is a snapshot of what a student academic abilities are, and it may not even reflect a student's academic ability depending on how serious the student took the test, if the student completed the assessment, if the student was even available to take the test. So it is a snapshot, one moment in time, and it does not always give a full picture, but it is information that can be used when having a discussion about where students need improvement. Now, with the data that is available, this may reveal some academic gaps. The staff can look at substandards to identify specific strands to build math and language foundational skills. A lot of times state tests focus on language, mathematics, and perhaps science, and this is with really close analysis of this information, then specific areas of concern can be identified and focused on to improve student outcomes. A second form of data that a staff can use is teacher assessment and observation. This data comes from teacher-generated tests, essays, projects, and other assignments that teachers can review. This data is a lot more up to date because it is from assignments that students are doing in the moment, and teachers can really capture what students are actually capable of. So it's a more up-to-date and relevant data, and it's data that the teachers can hone in on because they are able to teach concepts and then test students for mastery. And the final type of data that a staff can look at is more of what we would call the street data, and that is a student's background information. They want to look at what's happened with students during the early years. Was there stability in the homes? Were students tested for special education services? How was the attendance? Is there a history of homelessness, foster youth? Was social services ever involved in the students' lives? This information is really important just to get a background of what may be going on psychologically or socially, emotionally with students. Those areas have a direct impact on student learning. So getting this information is really important. And then moving into more of the middle or secondary years of school, staff would want to not only look at the previous areas, but also look at behavior, and was there an uptick in referrals and suspensions, expulsions? Was there any violent acts or habitual behavioral problems for a student? And also look at attendance and chronic truancy if that was a problem. And so all of this information in terms of data would really give a thorough picture, a good picture of how students, their background, how they're coming into the court and community school setting, and what needs to happen next. And from this information, then the staff can really hone in on specific issues that may arise in the learning environment just from all of the background information, and they would be able then to prepare a restorative or trauma-informed approach to handling specific behaviors and incidents that might happen. They can also isolate and start to think about foundational skills. That would be the third approach for seeing those academic improvements, and that is to focus on one or two foundational skills that the staff can really hone in on for the entire program, building, for example, number sense or reading comprehension throughout the program, focusing on specific strands or specific concepts that need to be reinforced or taught throughout the program is a really powerful approach for building foundations so students can advance from that point. And so with the analysis that was done from formative and summative assessments, as well as doing teacher generated assessments and looking at student backgrounds, the staff can really identify skills that need to be improved, and perhaps choose one language and one math foundational skill to focus on, and then implement instructional practices that would emphasize those academic focus areas program-wide. And then it would be important for you as the principal during site visits and during observations to ensure that assignment you are noticing and seeing the reinforcement of the language and the mathematic focus area that's being taught and reinforced in the classroom and implemented in the classroom. And so in order to really ensure that there is progress with students, the staff would need to implement a inquiry cycle, and this can be done in staff professional development time to, of course, come up with the plan after the analysis, data analysis has been done, and then implement the foundational skill, assess after a period of time that is agreed upon by the staff, assess students to see if progress has been made, and if not, then reflect on the practices and the implementation of that particular strategy, make adjustments, and then start the cycle over again to make sure that students have an opportunity to build those foundational skills. To go back to building the trauma-informed school, it is important to use a framework that is research-based for implementation of trauma-informed schools. And for the purpose of this video, we will talk about an MTSS framework, which is multi-tiered system of support. And in the first tier, the trauma-informed practices will be for students and staff, and that is program-wide. Those procedures that are in place that will impact everyone, or that will be in place for everyone, both students and staff in the program, including building a positive school climate, general wellness and support for all students and staff, and having emergency management in place. The second level of a multi-tiered system of support in court and community schools would be the early intervention for at-risk students and staff. And this may include screening students that are at risk and also having a threat assessment process in place. Finally, in the third level, there will be intense support for students, including intense individual treatment that may be prescribed or referred for students, individuals, as well as group intense treatment, and then also trauma-specific treatment for individuals. And so that would be at the third level of the multi-tier system of support for trauma-informed schools. So this will conclude our discussion in terms of how to really see improvements in student academic outcomes. And to review, we want to have set up a trauma-informed school and put practices in place that would support both students and staff. We want to take a deep dive into data, any data that we have that would help us understand how students are coming in, what their academic progress has been so far, and how we can identify those areas that can be built up with best instructional practices and reinforcing and laying a strong foundation or a better foundation for basic skills. And then we want to also focus on those specific skills for students in our program, and that means to identify a language and a math skill, and to go through an inquiry cycle so that we plan for the best instructional strategy. We implement that strategy, assess our students to see if they have made improvement, and then we make adjustments before moving on to another strategy or continuing with the same strategy. So I hope that this was an informative video for you and that you received value from it. Please like this video and share it Also, please turn on notifications. I will post a new video once per week with more information about how to effectively run a court and community school. This is for new and struggling principals or anyone that is interested in knowing more about leadership in court and community schools. And also, please subscribe to this channel so that you will be able to continuously get more and more information about leadership in court and community schools. So thank you for watching this video. I will see you on the next one. Bye.